Hello, welcome to Crafting with Lee. Today I'm going to make this sunflower petal wreath. These are the supplies I used to make this wreath. I also used some black burlap to cover the center. I'm going to start by cutting a circle out of this floral foam that I have. I just used a spool of ribbon and a marker to trace. I don't suggest doing this. This is just what I had on hand. Actually, I made another one after this, and I went to Dollar Tree and bought two circles. They were probably the same size as what I'm cutting out now, and I just hot glued those together and painted them, and it was so much easier than trying to cut it out and a lot less messy. If you do decide to cut it out, make sure you're really careful with the knife. I'm going to use a 14-inch wire frame, and I'm going to trace the inside onto a piece of plastic canvas. I got it in a pack at Walmart. And then when I cut this out, I'm going to cut just outside of the circle so that it's big enough for me to attach to the center ring. Now I'm just going to flip it over, and I go probably 2 squares in and put my zip tie and then wrap it around the wreath form, and I try to do them across. So like I'll do this side and then I'll do the one across from it, and I don't tighten the first two until I get it where I like it. Here's everywhere I added a zip tie. And you can add more or less depending on how big your wire wreath form is or how secure you want it. And now I'm just cutting away the excess zip ties. I didn't have any small green mesh to make the leaves, so I'm cutting down 21-inch mesh. I don't recommend doing this because it's really messy. I made it work, but it's a lot better when you don't have as much fraying. I was able to keep a smooth side on each one, so that was nice. I'm just taking the square and bringing opposite corners together, and it creates like a bow tie. And I'm going to use 2 per each petal. I do the leaves the same way I do the petals, so I'll show you again how to do this with bigger mesh. Alright, so I just cross them over each other, and when I pull the one up, I make sure I twist it around so all of the pretty is facing me. You want to make sure all the pretty part of the leaves are on the same side. And then I'm just going to add a zip tie across it. And then once I tighten it, I'm going to readjust the petals one more time to make sure I've got them exactly how I want them. And then I do it super tight. See right there, I pull them all together. I made 3 of those for leaves. You can do leaves all the way around if you'd like. I've seen people do that. I just wanted 3 sections with leaves. I'm using a zip tie to add it to the outer ring of the frame. Later, I go in and add more zip ties because this was really loose. And like I said, I did 3 sections. I'm going to use 12-inch mesh for my petals, and I'm just making a clean start. And I'm going to cut squares. I believe these are 12 by 12 squares. I end up using 2 full rolls of 10-yard mesh. And like I said, you use 2 squares per petal. See, I just took the square and made it a diamond, and then bring the 2 corners together and then pinch it. And then once I do the X, I'm twisting that petal so all of the pretty ones are facing me. You want to make sure you don't have the edges facing you. That won't look very pretty. And now I'm just going to cross a zip tie over it and then tighten. And you do several of these. If you made a smaller or used a smaller wreath form, it wouldn't take as much. You want to make sure you get it pretty tight. You don't want it moving around in there, and it holds its shape better when it's tighter. And then I do trim away the zip tie because there's going to be so many in a circle. You don't want them getting in the way. I decided with the leaves to add some zip ties right around the bottom, it kind of made them poke out more instead of spreading out. And I like that so much that I did it to the outer layer of my petals. See, the yellow has a zip tie around it, and then I just fed a zip tie through the hole that it created. This just made them stick straight out instead of being spread out. I like the center ones being spread out, but the outside ones, I really liked it sticking straight out. And I think you can see right here, I'm going to show you how I feed it through the hole. Yeah. And this works for me. You can do whatever you want. This was actually my first time making a petal wreath, and I really like how it turned out. I ended up making 2 of them. Okay, now to do the center, I just feed it through the mesh. I go down the mesh and back up, probably 2 or 3 squares over, and then put that through the center of the petal and pull it tight. I decided to paint the center black before I add the burlap, just so you couldn't see any of the green through it. And I'm pressing down with the sponge paintbrush so it gets into all the crevices and creases. I did the top and the sides, but I didn't do the bottom. I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to cover the thing with burlap yet, so I'm just cutting a couple pieces just to get myself started. I like the way it formed around it, so I'm just going to use hot glue and just slowly make my way around. I do pretty much 4 corners, even though it's a circle. Be very careful when you do this because the hot glue will stick through the burlap since it's got so many holes in it. And I do this all the way around. The 2 edges that have the excess burlap, I trim that away later. And I think if I hadn't have painted it black, it wouldn't have covered as well. And what I'm doing to this side, I do to the other side. I'm just not going to make you watch it. And I just kind of hold it there until it dries. And then I'm able to trim it away. I like the way it covered the top, but I wanted the sides covered as well since it was so thick. So I decided to cut the burlap in half. And then the pretty line, like the seam part, I'm facing up. And then I'm just going to wrap it around. And then once all that dries, I'm going to cut away the excess. I wanted to go ahead and get this part out of the way before I finish the center so I could figure out exactly where to add the rest of my mesh. I'm making a outline of it because I want the mesh to be inside of the circle. So when I add it, you can't see any of the canvas part. When I'm adding the petals on the actual canvas, I'm making sure that I put each petal in between the existing ones. So where you see a gap is where I'm adding the next petal. And I'm doing the same thing here that I did with the second layer. You go down through the mesh, go a couple over, put it back up, place your petal in there, and then pull it tight. I zoomed in and froze it here so you can see what it looks like. Once I get all of my petals onto my wreath, I'm going to add my center. Now to add my center, I have my hand underneath pushing it up. And as I'm pushing up with one hand, I'm putting floral picks through the back. And I'm putting several in there just to make sure it holds. And then to really secure it in there, I'm adding hot glue. After I add the hot glue, I do put my hand back under there and press up until it dries. And then I decided to go back through and fix some of the petals that were really rough looking because they'll get hung on each other and they start to fray. And then I just kind of adjusted where I put the petals. And that was it. That's how I made my flower petal sunflower. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, or you can email me at craftingwithlee@yahoo.com. Thanks so much for watching, and if you like my video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.